welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video and welcome back to another monthly wrap-up. It's pretty rare that I get around to filming monthly wrap-ups, but I had some time to do it for the month of July, so I figured I would sit down and share with you all the books that I read in the month of July. July was my birthday month, and it was supposed to be a large, lavish month for reading where I read any and everything that came to my mind, anything that I absolutely wanted to read, and that just didn't happen. July ended up being a absolutely crazy month with a move that got sprung on us at the last moment. That being said, I was still able to read quite a few books and have a great time reading, so I'm very excited to share all the books that I was able to read last month, as well as talk about my stats for the month of July as well. So without further ado, let's talk about the stats and then we'll get into the books. And of course, as always, if you guys hear anything in the background, I'm so sorry. Not something I can control at this point, but we'll get through it together. Okay, I'm going to shift over so you can see all the photos here, but first we're going to talk about our stats. And the amount of books I was able to read in the month of July was 14 books, so pretty great for the crazy month that I had. I read a total of 6,315 pages. That equates to an average of 451 pages per book and an average of 203 pages per day. I listened to 160 audiobook hours. I read 10 books via mixed media format and 4 audiobooks. I read all novels this month, so 14 novels. As for my star rating breakdown, I gave out 7 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 1 4 star, 1 3.5 star, and 1 book that I didn't rate because I DNF'd it. As for my genre breakdown, I read 10 romances, 3 fantasy romances, and 1 straight fantasy. And then for my age range, all the books I read this month were adult. Now for my representation breakdown, the representation I'm going to talk about is in regards to anything that involves mental health, illness, or any type of disability representation. So I read 6 books where the main character had some type of rep, and 8 books where it was absent altogether. For that breakdown, all 6 books were books with mental health rep. As for my LGBTQI+ breakdown, I read 2 books where it was present in the side character. And for that, I read 1 book that had bisexuality rep and 1 book that had lesbian rep. Now, this stat is super shameful for this month, but I read 0 books with any type of POC representation, which is definitely something that I work on doing every month, but this month it just fell a little flat. I read 10 books this month written by women and 4 books written by multiple authors. 11 of those books were part of a series and 3 were standalones. I started a total of 3 series this month. I continued on with 6 series and I finished 3 series. 10 of them I read for the very first time and 4 were rereads for me. 12 of them I owned and bought myself. 1 came from a book box, and 1 I got through Audible. Now for my publication year breakdown, I read 7 books from 2023, 1 book from 2022, 2 books from 2021, 1 book from 2017, 1 book from 2016, and 2 books from 2015. And finally, for my color breakdown, I read 6 black books, 2 blue books, 2 red books, 1 purple book, 1 green book, 1 white book, and 1 pink book. Alright, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into all of the books that I read this month. Kicking it off with Swoon by Lauren Rowe. This book follows Colin, who is the drummer in a very, very popular band, and his best friend's sister, who have had a very fantastic relationship growing up. They were really good friends, but as she gets older, they realize that they have some attraction there. Colin ends up hiring Amy to be his assistant because he got hired to be a part of a movie, and in the workplace, their romance kindles, and it is their friends to lovers, brother's best friend romance. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was not my favorite read of the month, but I still had a really great time with it. The audiobook itself was absolutely fantastic. They did so much work in putting in actual recorded music into this audiobook, and it was stellar. That being said, the romance in and of itself wasn't my favorite thing to read. It didn't have a whole bunch of character to it. It was also very cringy at times, some of the jokes and some of the way they talked about this one particular method of bringing someone to the big O just wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be to read about. But other than that, I had a good time. It was fast-paced, it was fun, it didn't take me too long to read, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a fun rock star romance. I think it's a good one. Then I read my first reread of the month, and that is Timber by Miss Tate James, the last book in the Hades series, and I absolutely love this book so freaking much. If you don't know what the Hades series is, it is a why choose romance following mafia characters. You meet the persona of Hades in the first book in this world, which is the Madison Kate series. I do recommend reading that series first before jumping into this one. However, that being said, you can totally read them as standalones. The relationship tropes that you can follow in this series are grumpy sunshine, friends to lovers, and an age gap romance. Everything is definitely taboo and forbidden, and it is also very hot and very sexy, but please make sure to check your trigger warnings. This is a very, very, very dark series, probably her second darkest series that she has written to date. The 4th book in and of itself is probably one of the hardest books that I have read, just because there's a good chunk in there where it gets very dark and it's talked about on page. So be kind to yourself, read the trigger warnings if you're interested in this series, but it is one of my favorite Why Choose Romances, and I cannot wait to do a reread again sometime in the future. And if you couldn't already tell, I gave this one 5 stars. Up next, I read Coach by Stephanie Perry. This is a second chance friends to lovers romance. This one follows Ford and Millie. Ford and Millie had a really wonderful friendship at the beginning of this book when they were in college, but they ended up having a falling out, and it isn't until years later where they are forced to be in close contact with each other once again. Ford gets a job where Millie works at a college football stadium. He is now the coach. He has stepped away from being an NFL player. He is a single father, and he is working on rebuilding his life in this new town, but he bumps into Millie at work and realizes that his feelings for Millie never changed. For Millie, it is the same way, but she was very heartbroken by how things transpired between the two of them, and it is their second chance romance of finding happiness again. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Stephanie Perry definitely works magic when she writes her books, and I really enjoyed her take on a sports romance. That being said, I did enjoy her Eden series a little bit more. There were some parts about this book that I didn't absolutely fall in love with. I feel like the push and pull between the relationship and the reasons why they weren't together, for me, just weren't as valid as I wanted them to be. That being said, the steamy scenes were steamy, and the relationship development was very, very spot on. So if you are looking for a good sports romance and want to delve into a standalone, this is one I highly recommend. Then I picked up That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. This one was so fun. This is a fake dating to fake engagement to fake marriage, enemies to lovers romance set in a small town. This was just absolutely so much fun. This follows Avery and Emmett. Avery has this big dream of owning the restaurant that she works at, and when things finally open up and she's able to buy the restaurant, she realizes that she's in a little bit more trouble than she had originally assumed. She's unable to get a loan. Emmett, who is very much loved in this town by everyone, seems to get under Avery's skin quite a bit. But when he finds out that she needs a loan and he needs to look better in the eyes of his town as he is running for mayor, he realizes that he needs Avery to fake date him in order for his appearance to look credible. So they end up entering into an engagement with a contract and rules, but things obviously get a little bit more involved and messy as they continue. I really love this book so much. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The small town quirkiness of this series is definitely something that pulls me in, and I loved so much. And these two characters just had so much on-page chemistry that I just loved and was to die for. I cannot wait to move on to the rest of the books in the series. I've heard nothing but good things. That being said, the audiobooks aren't out yet, so I'll probably take my time with the series, but I'm very, very excited to continue, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Then I moved on with some rereads, and I picked up more Sarah J. Maas. I just cannot be stopped. And I picked up the first 2 books in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. I love the series so much, but it's been a long time since I read it, and I definitely was in the mood for a reread, especially because it was my birthday month. I just wanted things that were going to make me happy, and this definitely delivered. 5 out of 5 stars from me. Absolutely no one is surprised, especially because it is a reread, but I just had so much fun with the series. If for some reason you don't know what ACOTAR is about, this one follows Feyre. Her and her family have been down on their luck for quite some time, and Feyre is basically the sole breadwinner and the person that is feeding her family. So she goes out one day to hunt and ends up shooting and killing a wolf. She finds out later that this wolf is Fae, and the Lord of the Spring Court comes to collect as payment. He takes her life as forfeit for the Fae that she killed. He ends up taking her back to the Spring Court, where she will live out the rest of her days as a sentence for her crimes. It is a enemies to lovers, close proximity, Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is definitely a lot more than that as you continue on with the series. The plot changes quite a bit, and there's definitely a whirlwind ride from start to finish, but it's definitely worth the read. I'm so excited that I was able to reread these 2 books, and I cannot wait to continue on with my reread as we move forward through the rest of the year. We started off with Fairy Smut, and then we moved over to That Sick Love by Jessie Hall. This is a very, very, very dark book. Definitely one of the darkest books I think I've ever read in my entire life, but it was so good. This follows Arrow and Bryony. Bryony has grown up in a very controlling religious environment, and she has a stalker. Her stalker is Arrow. She knows very much who her stalker is closer to the beginning of this book, but he takes it upon himself to open her up to the cruelties and injustices of the world around her, and it is a stalker romance between the 2 of them. It is very dark, and it is definitely a book where she becomes very much enveloped into the dark and finds that she absolutely loves it. And Arrow obviously has no problem with that, and showing her that she is powerful in her own right. It is one of the best stalker romances I have read. I have now read a couple, and this one just takes the cake. It is dark, but it's also delicious and so sexy. You definitely 100% need to check the trigger warnings on this one because it is so incredibly disturbingly dark. But I had a great time with it. It is a chunky baby, but oh my gosh, was it so good. If you are ready to delve into something like this, I highly recommend it, but if not, I'm not going to recommend it to everyone, that's for sure. Then I need to talk about the book that I DNF'd, and that is The Witch's Lament by Kathy Walker. This was the first book in a series. It was like a mystery, fantasy, witchy book. I don't really remember too much about it, to be honest with you, and I don't really want to spend my time talking about it. I didn't like any part of it. The writing was bad, the characters were bad, the plot was just not there, and I just did not have a good time with it. I think I DNF'd it about 61% and did not look back. After that DNF, I needed some wonderfulness in my life, and for that I picked up Powerless by Elsie Silver. This one is just, it's so good. It's so good. It is a friends to lovers, kind of forbidden romance, sport romance on top of that, with a very tortured hero. And I just had the best time with this book. This book follows Jasper and Sloan, and at the beginning of this book, Sloan is engaged to a douchebag of a guy, and Jasper knows that he kind of missed his shot with a girl that he has loved so much, but is not going to do anything about it until she finds out some information at her wedding that forces her to flee from her wedding. And of course, Jasper is her getaway man. And it is their friends to lovers romance. That being said, they have grown up kind of like cousins their entire life, but they've never really claimed that title as cousins. They've always sworn that they were just friends. And as they spend more time together, Jasper is going through it quite a lot because his brother, Beau, is missing in action in the army, and he's forced to take time away from his job, hockey, to focus on his mental health. And Sloan is really there by his side every step of the way. And during their close proximity, the chemistry is out of control and they finally give into it. And it just was so good. So much talking here about mental health, and it was a really beautiful exploration of a friends to lovers romance. If you are looking for a good one and you don't want to read the rest of the books in the series, I would recommend reading this, but I will say that all the other books in the series are so phenomenal, so don't skip them, go back to them, but this one is definitely a good one. 5 out of 5 stars for me. We can get this one out of the way in one fell swoop, and that is because it is an entire quartet that I read, and I just had the best time. And that is, of course, none other than the Boys of Belrose series by Tate James and Jamie and Eve. I loved this series so much. It was so good. The first book is Poison Roses. The second one is Dirty Truth. Then we have Shattered Dreams and Beautiful Thorns. This is a quartet. It is a why choose rockstar mafia style dark romance. So please check your trigger warnings if you are going to go into this one, but if you are looking for all of those things, it is such a fun, fast-paced series that I had just such a great time with. This one follows Billy. Billy is down on her luck at the beginning of this book, and she ends up getting kicked out of her apartment because she can't afford to pay the rent. She ends up meeting a woman on the street that offers her a waitressing job, and she is desperate, so she takes it. At the end of the night, there is a shooting, people are being killed, and she runs into somebody from her past. She knows that he will hand her over to his father and she will die, so she goes on the run and ends up in the arms of Rhett. Rhett is a member of a band, but she doesn't know which band it is until she finds out that this band is Belrose, the band named after her because her ex-boyfriend Jace is the lead singer in this band. Rhett was willing to offer her safety, but she realizes that not only did she run from one person from her past today, she ends up running into a second one, and Jace absolutely hates her. She ended up scorning him really bad in the past and built an entire band and his music around his hate for Billy. But she has nowhere else to go, and Rhett is not willing to let her walk back into danger, so she ends up going on tour with these 4 men, and it becomes a why choose romance from there. It is definitely a bully hate to love romance, but it is so good. These are not my favorite Tate James books. I would definitely say they are more like candy. I couldn't put them down. I just kept wanting to pop them in my mouth. That sounded weird, but understand the metaphor there. But it was just so fun and engaging and just a really great time. They all have cliffhangers. I couldn't wait to pick up the next book, and I gave them all 4.5 stars, except for one I gave 4 stars. So all in all, it was a fantastic series, and I'm so glad that I read it. Okay, these books are gonna fall, so if you see it happen, No, you didn't. All right, let's talk about the last and final book that I was able to read in the month of July, and that is, of course, A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I read the core 3 novels in this series this month, and I just had such a blast. I'm not going to talk about it too much. You guys already know my thoughts and feelings on this series, but I absolutely loved it. This is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series, and they're all falling down now. I promise you guys didn't see it. But this 3rd and final book in the core series is just so good. 5 out of 5 stars, absolutely gut-wrenching, absolutely wonderful, and so well done. Another absolute banger from the Lord and Savior, Sarah J. Maas. Alrighty, that is everything that I was able to read in the month of July. Honestly, a very fantastic reading month, besides the fact that I didn't get to read 500 books like I had planned. Let me know what you guys were able to read in the month of July and what was your favorite. Also, feel free to let me know what you thought of any of the books that I mentioned today. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. If you made it to the end of this video, please leave a rose emoji for the Boys of Belrose series. And that is the end of this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. Baby, turn it down like a sweet and ready. Keep it nice and steady. Know that you've been keeping patience.